The quieter you become, the more you can hear. But here's what they didn't tell you. The quieter you become, the louder they start to hear their own thoughts about you. Your silence, what they once ignored, now echoes in their mind like a song they can't get out of their head. You pulled away, not to punish them, but to protect your peace. And suddenly, your emotional distance started doing something unexpected. It made them feel closer to you than ever. That's the paradox we're unpacking today, how silence turns emotional distance into attraction. Hey folks, imagine this. You're standing in a room full of noise. Everyone's talking, shouting, laughing. And then, suddenly, someone walks out. They don't slam the door. They don't make a scene. They just disappear. At first, no one notices. But after a few minutes, the absence gets louder than the noise. People start asking, "Where did they go?" That's you. That's what silence does. It doesn't scream. It haunts. We've been fed a lie, my friends. A lie that says if you don't speak up, if you don't chase, if you don't explain yourself, they'll forget you. But the truth? Silence is one of the most powerful emotional tools you've got when used with purpose, with peace, and with self-respect. Because silence doesn't say, "I don't care." It says, "I care too much about myself to beg for what's not being given freely." You see, most people panic when they feel someone slipping away. They flood them with messages. They try to fix it. They chase. But what they don't realize is this: chasing attention often kills attraction. It shows you're unsure, emotionally dependent, unstable. But silence shows composure. It shows certainty. It shows a kind of calm that makes people lean in, because now they're wondering, why aren't they chasing me? Did I lose my grip on them? Have they moved on? Marcus Aurelius said it best: waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. You don't prove your worth with desperate words. You prove it by staying grounded in stillness, in discipline, in knowing who you are, without needing applause or approval. Your silence is not a gap, it's a mirror. It reflects their behavior, their choices, and their consequences. And let me tell you, nothing gets into someone's head faster than being left alone with the echo of their own actions. My friends, silence is not the absence of power, it's the concentration of it. It's like pulling back a bowstring. You're not retreating, you're preparing to launch forward. And when you stay composed, calm, and emotionally detached, not cold, just centered, you create a magnetic pull they didn't expect. They start to remember your voice, your presence, your energy. And suddenly, every post you don't like, every message you don't send, every call you don't make, it hits harder than words ever could. And don't get it twisted. This isn't about being petty or playing mind games. This is about mastering your emotions. This is about shifting the dynamic with dignity. Because when they realize that your peace means more to you than their attention, that's when the tables turn. That's when curiosity becomes obsession. So if you've been silent, if you've pulled back, and you're wondering if they even notice, trust me, they do. Maybe not right away, but silence has a delayed effect. And when it hits, it stings. Not in the heart first, but in the ego. That's when they start to feel the absence. That's when they begin to reflect. Remember this: you don't need to shout your value. Just stop whispering to those who never listened. Write this in the comments: my silence is power. Let it be your declaration. Let it be your shield. And if this message spoke to something inside you, smash that like button, subscribe for more Stoic clarity, and stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1. Silence isn't the end, it's the beginning of curiosity. When you are offended at any man's fault, turn to yourself and study your own failings. Then you will forget your anger. Marcus Aurelius. Let's break something wide open today, my friends. They didn't pull away because silence was supposed to fix things. They pulled away thinking it was over, done, that your silence would mean closure, acceptance, or even surrender. But what they never saw coming was that your silence would turn into a mystery they can't stop thinking about. They thought your quiet meant you gave up, but instead, you became the question they can't answer, the story they can't finish, the chapter that ends mid-sentence and now keeps them up at night. Think about it like this. Imagine someone walking out of a theater in the middle of the movie. Everyone else is still watching, but that one person just leaves. No goodbye, no explanation. At first, maybe no one notices. But then, people start to whisper, "Why did they go? What happened?" The empty seat suddenly draws more attention than the entire scene playing out on stage. That's what silence does. It doesn't end the show. It steals the spotlight. But here's where most people fall for the trap. They believe the lie that silence equals weakness. That if they're not constantly explaining themselves, constantly texting, constantly showing they care, then they'll be forgotten. That love dies without words. That connection fades without effort. And I get it, that's scary, especially when you care deeply, when you've invested time, energy, emotion, when you've built something and now it feels like it's slipping through your fingers. The silence feels like quicksand, and the urge to do something becomes overwhelming. But pause with me for a second. What if silence wasn't a retreat? What if it was a strategy? What if it wasn't a void, but a canvas, a blank space their mind has to fill? Because here's what happens when you go quiet, not out of malice, but out of calm certainty. You hand them a question they don't know how to answer. You pull away, and suddenly they're stuck with their own thoughts, their own guilt, their own memories. You're no longer speaking, but now you're louder than ever. Because the loudest voices are the ones echoing in silence. It's in this gap, this unexpected stillness, that curiosity is born. Not just curiosity about you, but about themselves. Why did they stop feeling secure the moment you stopped reaching out? Why did they assume they'd always have access to you? Why does your absence feel so different from anyone else's? That's the real shift. You didn't tell them to think. You just stopped feeding them answers. And suddenly, the questions became impossible to ignore. Let's not forget, the human brain hates open loops. It craves certainty. It wants stories to end neatly, people to explain themselves, situations to be clear. But when you step away, when you don't offer clarity or closure, you become that open loop. That psychological tension builds. And tension, my friends, is the birthplace of attraction, not in manipulation, not in games, but in natural, undeniable, soul-deep curiosity. And maybe you're sitting there thinking, yeah, but what if they don't care? What if my silence means nothing to them? That's the fear, right? The fear that you were forgettable, replaceable. But let me hit you with the truth. People don't forget presence that brought peace. People don't replace energy that made them feel seen. They just distract themselves until silence becomes too loud to ignore. Marcus Aurelius said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." When your thoughts are rooted in fear, silence feels like punishment. But when your thoughts are anchored in purpose, silence becomes power. You are not going quiet because you lost. You are going quiet because you know your worth doesn't scream for attention. It simply exists. And in a world full of noise, that kind of calm hits different. So here's what I want you to do. Don't reach out just to silence your own fear. Don't explain yourself just to feel in control. Let them sit with the silence. Let the story unfold without your narration. Let them wonder. Let them reflect. Because the moment they realize you're not begging to be understood, that's the moment your value multiplies. Type this in the comments if you feel this in your soul. My silence creates curiosity. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that your peace isn't up for debate, and your absence speaks louder than forced conversation ever could. And stay with me, because what comes next is how that silence starts to shift them. Number 2. The mind fills the gaps you leave empty. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Marcus Aurelius. My friends, here's something wild. Your silence is not silence to them. It's noise. Constant, unrelenting mental noise. You see, when you stop speaking, when you stop showing up, when you stop handing them explanations like candy, their mind doesn't rest. It runs, it rewinds, replays, reanalyzes everything. Why? Because the brain cannot stand unresolved tension. It will search for meaning even where none was given. And that's where your true power lives, not in what you said, but in what you chose not to. Imagine it like this. They used to have a map. You were predictable, available, responsive. They knew when you'd reach out, what you'd say, how you'd react. But now, you're gone, emotionally, energetically. It's like someone removed all the street signs and landmarks. They're lost in a familiar city with no guidance. That's the power of silence. It doesn't just remove presence, it removes certainty. And certainty is what kept them comfortable. Now they're left with blanks, gaps in the story, empty spaces where your words used to live. And do you know what happens to a mind obsessed with closure? It starts writing fiction. It fills in those gaps with fear, with questions, with self-doubt. Did I push them away? Are they moving on? Was I really that important to them? Were they stronger than I thought? That's the shift. Your silence is no longer absence. It becomes a mirror, one they stare into, one they can't escape. And unlike your old messages, this reflection doesn't flatter them. It challenges them. It exposes their behavior. And here's the kicker. They don't have you there anymore to dilute the truth with reassurances. They have to sit in the discomfort. They may not admit it. In fact, they'll act unbothered. They'll post, laugh, pretend it's business as usual. But let me tell you something straight. No one truly forgets someone who left a question mark behind. They may scroll past your silence, but it lingers, like a book they can't finish, but also can't stop thinking about. You were a chapter that felt safe, and now it's gone missing. Most people will tell you that if they cared, they'd reach out. That silence means it's over. But that's surface-level thinking. That's what reactive people believe. Let me give it to you the Stoic way. Stillness creates depth. The deeper the silence, the louder the internal dialogue. And what matters isn't what they say on the outside. It's what they feel when the phone stays quiet, when your name pops up in their memory, but not in their inbox. So many of you struggle with this. You pull back, and then the fear sets in. What if they never think of me again? What if I was just another face in the crowd? But listen closely. You don't need to be remembered because you made noise. You'll be remembered because you created impact. And impact doesn't always shout. Sometimes it whispers in the quiet hours of regret. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." So let's flip that. What if your reaction was no reaction at all? Not because you don't feel anything, but because you're strong enough to let silence speak for you. That's mastery. That's growth. That's what separates those who seek attention from those who command respect. You're not trying to confuse them. You're not trying to punish them. You're simply done explaining what should have been felt. You're no longer available for people who need constant access but give inconsistent effort. Your silence is not empty. It is intentional. It's filled with your self-worth, your boundaries, your evolution. And yes, it's hard. It's damn hard, especially when you still care, when you still wonder, when you still feel that urge to check in just to see if they miss you. But every time you resist that urge, every time you let the space remain, you're reclaiming a piece of yourself. You're letting them experience what you already realized. That presence should never be taken for granted. So here's your reminder. Don't fear the silence. Don't rush to fill it. Let it echo. Let it bounce around in their mind until it carves out reflection. Because you're not disappearing. You're defining your value. And the longer they go without hearing from you, the more they'll start to hear you in their own thoughts. Type it in the comments if you're with me. I let silence speak for me. Say it with your chest. Say it for your peace. Say it for the version of you that stopped chasing and started choosing. And stay with me because next, we'll go deeper into how emotional absence becomes the beginning of self-reflection and how that reflection can flip everything. Number 3. Emotional absence forces self-reflection. Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul. Marcus Aurelius. Let's go deeper, my friends, because here's the truth most never see coming. The moment you walk away, emotionally, silently, intentionally, you don't just vanish from their life. You enter their mind, not as a memory, not as a ghost, but as a mirror. A mirror that forces them to finally sit with something they avoided the entire time, themselves. See, when you were always there, always texting, always checking in, always picking up the pieces they never had to reflect, you were the buffer between them and their own behavior. You were the comfort zone, the safety net, the emotional reassurance that kept them from having to feel the full weight of their actions or inactions. But now, that net is gone, that comfort is missing, and all that's left is space. And space is where self-reflection begins. Think about it. When you remove your presence, you also remove the distractions, the instant replies, the emotional cushion. You stop absorbing their chaos, and suddenly they're alone in the quiet, alone with the version of themselves they were when they had you, and the version of themselves they've become since losing you. That contrast, that realization, it's not always easy for them to face. Imagine it like this. You were the steady lighthouse during their storm, always glowing, always there, guiding them through their own mess. They might not have appreciated it then. They might have even taken that light for granted. But now that it's gone, the sea feels darker, the journey feels heavier, and every wave starts to look different because you're not there to help them navigate it anymore. This is where Stoicism teaches us the deepest lesson. That true clarity comes not from confrontation, but from contemplation. You don't need to argue. You don't need to send them a long message pointing out what they did wrong. Because silence, when it comes from strength, is the most honest feedback in the world. It says, I saw what you did. I felt what you couldn't say, and I chose peace over performance. Seneca once said, it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it. And trust me, they feel that waste when you're gone. They start replaying moments they shrugged off. They start remembering the care you gave so effortlessly, the small things, the consistent energy, the emotional space you held for them. All of it starts resurfacing in your absence, Because now, without your presence filling in all the emotional blanks, their memory has to work overtime. And memory, my friends, isn't filtered through logic, it's filtered through loss. And here's the thing, they won't always show it. They might act unbothered, post like nothing's wrong, even talk to someone new. But remember, distraction isn't healing, it's avoidance. And avoidance always catches up. Because when the noise fades and the world gets quiet, it's your voice they'll hear echoing in that silence. Not because you said something, but because you stopped saying anything. That's the real paradox of emotional absence. The more you pull back, the closer they get to confronting the truth. Not just about you, but about themselves, about how they showed up, about what they pushed away, about what they couldn't see clearly when you were still there. Now, I know this isn't easy. I know some of you are still wrestling with the silence, wondering if you did the right thing by pulling back, wondering if they'll ever see your worth. But hear me loud and clear. They can't see clearly until you leave the room. Sometimes your presence was the fog. Not because you were doing anything wrong, but because you were making it too easy for them to avoid the truth. You want them to value you. Let them feel life without you. Let them taste the absence of your energy. Not to hurt them, not to punish them, but because growth requires space. And when you walk away with peace, not pride, not spite, not games, real reflection begins. So if you're sitting in silence right now, unsure if it's making a difference, trust that it is. Maybe not in the way you expected, maybe not with instant results, but trust that your absence is doing the work your words never could. You're not forgotten, you're being remembered in the stillness. Drop this in the comments if you're standing in your power. My absence awakens reflection. Let the world see it. Let them feel it. Let yourself believe it. And stay with me, because next we'll unravel how this space you've created, this distance, isn't just reflection. It's transformation for them and for you. Number 4. Stillness. Signals strength, not surrender. He who is brave is free. Seneca. Let's clear this up right now, my friends. Just because you've gone silent doesn't mean you've given up. Just because you're not chasing, not explaining, not reacting, doesn't mean you're weak. That's the lie they want to believe. That's the story the world tries to tell you. That silence equals surrender. But in reality, stillness is a form of strength most people will never understand, because it takes courage to stay calm when everything in you wants to shout. It takes power to sit in the fire and not flinch. You see, most people live loud because they're afraid of what silence might reveal. They talk over truth. They react to avoid reflection. They fill the space with noise to avoid facing what's really going on inside. But you stopped. You got still. And that, my friend, is where the shift began. Because the moment you stopped responding, they started to. Not always out loud, not always with messages or calls, but internally. Oh, they feel it. That quiet of yours. It isn't quiet to them, it's deafening, and it screams, I'm no longer accessible just because you got used to me being around. Picture a mountain during a storm. The winds are howling, the trees are swaying, the clouds are roaring. But the mountain doesn't move. That's you. You're not cold. You're composed. You're not passive. You're powerful. That stillness you've stepped into, it's not about ignoring what happened. It's about choosing not to be ruled by it. And that choice, it rattles people. Because when someone expects chaos and gets calm instead, they don't know what to do with it. They were used to a version of you that explained everything, that chased when things got uncertain, that tried to fix what was broken, even if you weren't the one who broke it. But not anymore. Now, you've traded explanations for elevation, You've stopped managing their emotions and started protecting your own peace. And in a world addicted to reaction, that kind of restraint, it's rare, it's magnetic, and yes, it's unforgettable. But don't be surprised when your stillness triggers discomfort. Don't be shocked if they accuse you of being cold, heartless, detached. That's just projection. Because people who rely on chaos hate when their storm no longer moves you, when they can't manipulate your emotions with silence or mixed signals. When you remain steady, even as they try to provoke you, they begin to lose the grip they thought they had. And nothing challenges the ego more than losing control over someone who used to be easy to reach. And I know some of you might still be struggling with the urge to explain, to defend your silence, to prove you're not the bad one. But hear me, you don't owe anyone a performance to validate your peace. You don't need to shout your side of the story to stay rooted in truth. Let them misunderstand you. Let them spin their own version. Because your actions aren't for applause, they're for alignment. And if they can't feel your energy anymore, maybe that's exactly the wake-up call they needed. Seneca didn't write, "He who is loud is free." He said, "He who is brave is free." And it takes bravery to be still in a world that wants to shake you. It takes strength to walk away without slamming the door. To sit with your dignity intact, knowing that real power doesn't beg to be seen, it simply is. Stillness doesn't say, "I'm done." It says, "I've evolved." It says, "I'm no longer seeking closure, I'm seeking clarity." And it tells the world around you that you're not reactive. You're rooted, grounded in principle, anchored in self-worth. And that kind of energy doesn't chase, it attracts. So if you've gone still, if you've chosen peace over performance, understand this. They feel it. They might not admit it, they might not show it, but deep down, they feel the shift. They feel the gravity of your absence. And in that stillness, they're forced to ask themselves, why doesn't this move them anymore? Say it with me. Say it loud in the comments so they know where you stand. My stillness is strength. That's your affirmation. That's your armor. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that silence isn't your surrender. It's your stance. Stay with me, because up next, we're going to dive into what happens when your silence becomes a mirror, and what they start seeing in that reflection might just change everything. Number 5. You become the mirror. They can't escape. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. Marcus Aurelius. Here's what no one tells you, my friends. When you go silent, you don't disappear. You reflect. You stop being the conversation, and you start becoming the consequence. And trust me, that shift is brutal for someone who was used to seeing their reflection in your kindness, your patience, your attention. They were so busy looking at you, they never realized they were being seen. But now that you're gone, now that you've stepped back without a scene or a scream, they're left staring straight into themselves, and what they see, it's not always pretty. You become the mirror they tried to avoid, the one that doesn't flatter, the one that doesn't filter, the one that shows the truth they weren't ready to face. Because as long as you were still responding, still explaining, still present, they could tell themselves whatever story they wanted. They could justify how they treated you. They could believe they were right. But when you fell silent, when you stopped feeding their delusion, that's when the real reflection began. And here's the thing. Mirrors don't talk back. They don't argue. They don't correct you. They just show you. That's what your silence is doing now. It's showing them what life feels like without your presence, without your reassurance, without your emotional labor. And it's not about punishing them. It's about revealing them. Because people can run from conversations, but they can't run from reflection. Picture this. You've been a mirror hanging on the wall the whole time. They passed by it every day, ignored it, maybe even smudged it. But now that you're gone, that mirror is missing. And in its absence, they realize something. They weren't just seeing you. They were seeing the best version of themselves that existed in your presence. And now it's gone. And they're left with someone they don't fully recognize. That's the haunting part. When your silence reflects back their actions, they're forced to ask hard questions. Was I too cold? Did I take them for granted? Why did I treat someone who cared like they were replaceable? And those questions don't go away just because they scroll or laugh or post a story. That's just noise trying to drown out the truth. Because when your energy is removed, when your mirror goes dark, they don't just lose you. They lose the version of themselves they liked best when they were with you. And I know what you're thinking, but what if they never look back? What if they never care? Let me tell you this straight. People always look. Maybe not today, maybe not this month. But no one forgets the mirror that made them confront what they refused to change. No one forgets the stillness that revealed the storm inside them. You see, the average person doesn't reflect. They react. They blame. They run. But the moment your presence is no longer buffering their chaos, they have no one left to project onto. And that silence? It becomes the clearest mirror they've ever faced. One that doesn't shatter when they get uncomfortable. One that holds them accountable. One that, without a single word, says, "This is what happens when you don't value what you had." And this is the power you now hold, not in manipulation, not in revenge, but in reflection. You've become untouchable, not because you're above them, but because you no longer absorb them. And that's what Stoicism teaches us, to detach from things we can't control, and to hold up a mirror not out of spite, but out of self-respect. So let them sit with it. Let the reflection marinate, because your silence is not empty. It's full of every version of you they dismissed, every good morning text they ignored, every time you listened when they were falling apart. All of that is now held in the silence, and it's loud. Louder than any argument could have ever been. You don't need to prove your worth, my friend. You already did. The mirror just wasn't clear enough back then. But now that you've stepped away, now that the noise is gone, they see it, they feel it, even if their pride won't let them admit it. So if you're walking in silence right now, don't doubt the effect. You're not invisible, you're unforgettable. You've become the quiet truth they can't escape. Say it with me and drop it in the comments. My silence reflects truth. Say it to reclaim your power. Say it to honor your growth. Show them, show yourself. Show the world that when words fail, your stillness becomes the mirror that never lies. Stay with me, because next, we're about to uncover how that very absence starts turning into value. Number 6. Scarcity makes you valuable. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. Epictetus. Let's talk about value. Real value. Not the kind you beg someone to recognize, but the kind that speaks for itself the moment you stop showing up for people who got too comfortable. Because here's what most folks don't get. It's not your presence that makes you valuable. It's your absence. It's the quiet space you leave behind when you stop over-giving, over-explaining, overextending. That's when they start to notice. That's when they start to feel the weight of you not being there. Scarcity isn't manipulation. It's a mirror, a test, a shift in gravity. And when you pull back, not out of pettiness, but out of peace, you force people to realize something they never had to consider before. You were a privilege, not a guarantee. Think about it. When something is always there, people stop noticing. Water from the tap? Normal, predictable, expected. but go without it for a few days, and suddenly you're grateful for every drop. That's how human psychology works. We take abundance for granted, and we crave what we can no longer access. The moment your energy becomes scarce, you stop being background noise, and you start becoming the only sound they want to hear again. But here's where it gets real. Most of you reading this have been trained to believe that constant availability is love, that the more you give, the more they'll see your worth, that if you're always there, always reliable, always accessible, they'll never leave. And yet, what happened? You gave everything, and they still pulled away. Because being available doesn't create attraction, being valuable does. And those two are not the same. When you were always one message away, always ready to fix, always saying yes, even when your soul was saying no, you became predictable, expected, a given. And what's expected stops feeling special. But the day you stopped texting first, the day you didn't reply within seconds, the day you chose the gym, your goals, your peace over another pointless conversation, something shifted. You became scarce. And in that scarcity, they started remembering all the things they forgot to value. They start asking themselves, where did that energy go? Why aren't they trying anymore? Who are they becoming now that I'm no longer the center of their focus? And that, my friends, is the moment you rise. Not in bitterness, not in revenge, but in self-respect. Because now your attention is no longer assumed. It has to be earned. Scarcity doesn't mean shutting people out. It means elevating your standard. It means choosing to show up for yourself first. It means realizing that your time, your energy, your emotional availability, those are investments, not donations. You don't just hand them out, you choose wisely. And that's what Stoicism teaches us, to control where we pour our life force and to never seek validation in the wrong places. So if someone suddenly feels the sting of your distance, that's not you being cruel. That's reality correcting itself. You didn't disappear. You just stopped flooding a space that didn't know how to handle the ocean of what you were offering. And now, in your absence, they're thirsty. And that thirst isn't just emotional, it's spiritual. Because your presence was more than comfort. It was grounding, it was healing. And now they feel the void. It's wild how the same people who once took your consistency for granted suddenly become obsessed when it's gone. They scroll through your profile. They think twice before sending that "hey" they used to throw carelessly. Because now the stakes feel different. Your attention feels rare. Your energy feels expensive. And it should. And maybe right now you're in the middle of this shift. Maybe you're starting to hold back and it feels weird, lonely even. But let me remind you, you're not losing connection, you're regaining control. You're not being cold, you're being intentional. You're not playing hard to get, you're living like someone who's hard to forget. And that, my friend, is where your value multiplies. So don't be afraid to make yourself scarce. Don't fear being missed. Let them sit with the silence. Let them experience the distance. Because in that space, in that slow burning absence, they'll realize that what once felt easy was actually extraordinary. Say it with me and stamp it in the comments. My presence is earned. That's your truth. That's your power. That's your standard now. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world around you that you're no longer available on demand. You are limited edition. And stay with me, because what comes next is how this energy shift flips you from predictable to irresistibly intriguing. Number 7, you shift from predictable to intriguing. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Epictetus. Let's be honest, folks, nobody's drawn to what's predictable. They may say they like comfort, consistency, even routine, but deep down, We're wired for mystery, for tension, for the unknown. And when you were always there, texting first, replying in seconds, pouring out your thoughts without being asked, you became something familiar, comfortable, easy to read, and eventually easy to ignore. But the moment you pulled back, not to play games, but because you finally realized your energy is sacred, that's when you shifted. That's when the dynamic started to bend. You stopped being the open book they skimmed through on autopilot, and you became the chapter they never saw coming. Think of it like this. A song loses its magic when it's on repeat. A movie doesn't thrill when you already know the ending. You were giving them the same access, the same rhythm, the same pattern day after day, and they stopped paying attention. But then, one day, the pattern changed. The rhythm paused. The predictable became uncertain. And now, you're intriguing. You're the plot twist their ego didn't expect. Now their mind starts racing. Why haven't they messaged me? Why are they quiet? Are they talking to someone else? They used to know your next move before you made it, but now you've flipped the script, and that creates psychological tension, not because you're trying to manipulate, but because you finally stopped narrating your every emotion. You let silence do what your words never could, spark curiosity. Let me remind you of something crucial here. When people can predict your every move, they stop respecting your presence. They assume you'll always be there, that you'll always fold, that they can leave you on red and you'll still show up like clockwork. But unpredictability, that's where power is reborn. That's where your silence becomes the question they keep trying to answer. This doesn't mean you vanish. This doesn't mean you become cold or fake. No. This is deeper. You become unavailable by default and intentional by design. You're not avoiding them. You're just no longer chasing them. Your life starts filling up with purpose. Gym sessions, learning, building, resting, creating, living. And now they have to wonder, what are they up to? Who are they becoming without me? And that wondering is magnetic. Marcus Aurelius said, "The tranquility that comes when you stop caring what they say or think or do, only what you do, that's freedom." And that's the shift you're stepping into. You're no longer living to be noticed, you're living to become, to evolve. And in doing that, you create a gravity around you that can't be faked. The average person will keep asking, should I double text? Should I post something to make them jealous? But you don't move like that anymore. You're not here for attention, you're here for alignment. You're not trying to get a reaction. You're becoming someone they can't predict, and that alone makes you unforgettable. Picture it. They used to know you'd respond right away, that you'd chase after a cold text, that your whole day would bend around their breadcrumbs. But now, you're not so easy to reach. Your replies are slower, shorter, more composed. You're not rude, you're not closed off. You're just no longer handing out VIP access to someone who treated your heart like general admission. And now they're unsettled. Not because you did something wrong, but because you're no longer predictable. You've become a riddle their pride can't solve. You've become the calm in the storm they thought they controlled. And every moment you don't reach out, their intrigue grows. Not in the heart at first, but in the ego. Because let's be real, ego hates losing access more than it hates losing love. So let it burn a little. Let them sit with the shift. While they're busy wondering, you're busy rising. You're not the same version they used to know. You've gone quiet. But you've become louder in their mind than ever before. Say it in the comments if this resonates. I am not predictable. I am evolving. Let that be your anthem. Let it be your identity. Show them. Show yourself. Show the world that you're no longer the open book they skimmed through. You're the sealed chapter they wish they never skipped. Stay with me, because next we'll talk about the one thing you can control when everything feels uncertain: your response. And that's where your power sharpens. Control the only thing you can: your response. We are not disturbed by what happens to us, but by our thoughts about what happens. Epictetus. Let's bring the truth to the surface, my friends. You can't control their silence. You can't control their mixed signals, their distance, their sudden coldness, or the way they pretend nothing happened. You can't control if they watch your stories or ignore your messages. But there is one thing, and only one, you have absolute power over: your response. And once you learn to master that, everything changes. The old version of you? Oh, you reacted, instantly, emotionally. You felt the energy shift, and you panicked. The "why are you pulling away" text, the late-night overthinking, the need to send one more message just to make sure they know you care. But what did that ever get you? Clarity? No. Peace? Definitely not. Respect? Not even close. What it got you was drained, diminished, disconnected from your own power. But you're not that version anymore. You're done living on emotional autopilot. You're no longer reacting to every vibration in the room like a tuning fork. You're becoming the instrument now, and that means learning the art of response over reaction. Let's be real. When they pull away, it hits. It triggers something deep. Maybe it's fear of abandonment. Maybe it's the wound of not being enough. Maybe it's the ghost of every other time you were left hanging. And your brain, trained by trauma and repetition, screams, "Do something!" But that's when you must pause. That's when your real power steps in. Think of it like this. A candle's flame flickers wildly in the wind. But a bonfire, it holds, it roars. That's you now. You're not a flicker, you're a force. And that force doesn't get blown out every time someone acts different. You don't panic, you don't chase, you don't need to, because your worth is no longer on trial. And here's where Stoic wisdom becomes your sword. You do not control them, you only control you. What they do, how they feel, what they post, who they talk to, that's their world. And it's not your job to manage someone else's chaos. It's your job to master your own calm. Let's say they suddenly stop texting like they used to. Most people will spiral. Did I say something wrong? Are they losing interest? Should I double text? Not you. You sit back, you observe, you mirror their energy without malice, without fear. You let your stillness speak. I'm not here to force connection. I'm here to protect peace. You have to understand this. Real strength isn't in doing more, it's in doing less, with intention. Your silence in response to chaos is louder than any paragraph you could type. Your calm reply to distance is more unsettling than any confrontation. Why? Because it says, "You don't own my emotional state. I do." And that kind of composure, that kind of discipline, that kind of control, it's rare. And rare is always respected, even by those who can't admit it. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. It takes practice. You'll feel the urge. You'll feel the itch to check their page, send the text, break the silence. And sometimes you'll slip, but that's okay. Because self-control isn't about being perfect. It's about getting stronger every time you choose yourself over impulse. So, here's what you do instead. You feel the emotion. You don't ignore it. You honor it. But you don't act from it. You let it pass through you like a storm over the ocean. You go for a walk. You hit the gym. You journal. You breathe. You come back to your center. And from that place, then you decide what's worthy of your energy. And guess what? Most of the time, you'll realize you don't need to do anything at all, that the most powerful response is no response, that your peace is louder than any text, that your silence holds more weight than your explanations ever did. And there it is, my friends, the truth they never expected. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, it was power. If this message spoke to your soul, hit that like button, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe for more strength, more growth, and more stoic clarity.